let's have a conversation. Hi, everyone. Welcome to my live conversation. I'm so excited about my next guest that I have with me here. Some of you may know him, John Brennan. He was on The Real World Season 2, Los Angeles. I also saw them call it Real World California, so I got a little bit confused by that. He made his triumphant comeback on The Real World Homecoming to let us know that he ain't done singing yet.
That's right.
And also, he was on 2 seasons of The Challenge. Is that right? 3 seasons of The Challenge. Excuse me. What were the 3 seasons, John?
So I was on the first one, which was actually called The Road Rules All-Stars. See, they didn't know they were going to start making the challenge. They didn't know that they were going to do the Road Rules versus Real World Challenge, which was, what it was called in the beginning. So they picked a bunch of ex-Real World people and called it Road Rules All-Stars. So it was Eric from season 1 Real World, me from season 2 Real World. It was called Real World California because they didn't know they were going to do more in California. So then it became Real World Los Angeles. Yeah. And so, and then they had Cynthia from Miami show and Sean from the Boston show. And the 5 of us did the first challenge ever, but it was called the Road Rules All-Stars. And then I was on Battle of the Seasons in 2001. And then I was in Inferno 2 in 2005.
And I only learned from interviews that you wanted to be on more. I didn't really realize that.
Yeah, well, they just keep picking all the cool kids, and they forget about the real OGs. They even call themselves OGs. I'm like, you guys don't know what an OG is. I was making reality shows when Mark Long was still in diapers.
One of my viewers said, "I love Real World LA. Great to see you, John."
Oh, thank you.
So I wanted to start with that. How did you end up auditioning to get on The Real World in the first place?
Well, funny story, true story. I did not audition. In 1992, I graduated high school and I went to Belmont University here in Nashville, where I had big, music dreams and aspirations, and country was huge. It had taken over the music scene in the early 90s. People that didn't even like country music were and they'd gone country. Alan Jackson, Garth Brooks, Travis Tritt, Vince Gill, all these superstars. So MTV had just done the Real World season 1 in New York, and they said, let's do another one in California. But this time, since country's so big, let's go get a country guy. So they came to Nashville, and long story short, they kind of stumbled across me in downtown Nashville. I was 18 years old, freshman in college, and I look like this with my hat and my boots. And are you a singer? I'm like, yeah, dude. Everybody in Nashville's a singer, by the way. And so they're like, you wanna fill out this paperwork, and you want to be on this MTV show? I was like, no, dude, that actually doesn't sound like a cool show. I actually want to stay here in Nashville and work on my music. And, after a lot of conversations with the creator of reality TV, Mary Ellis Bunham and John Murray, but mainly with Mary Ellis, she talked me into it and said, you're perfect for the show. You bring, the aspect of a Southerner and a young man that's, new at being an adult, and you have a perspective we really want from the show. You're a conservative Christian from a conservative Christian background, and you have music dreams. And that's the type of life that we're following on this show. And you'd be interacting with people from all different, walks. And she talked me into it. She made it sound like it was going to be really awesome. And it was a valuable experience. It's a very valuable experience, but it was a very, very stressful experience.
Yeah, so that leads me into something I wanted to ask you about the very start of the season. It was so unique for you guys, where yourself, Tammy, and Dominic had to drive to LA in this RV, and all kinds of things happened.
Yeah, well, Tammy grew up in New York, and Dominic grew up in Ireland, and they were both at the time living in Los Angeles. All of my roommates were living in Los Angeles. I was actually the only one that was transplanted from my home to the jungle of Los Angeles. And, they all had cars and apartments and friends and jobs. And I was really the only one that was just dropped into a crazy experience. But They flew Tammy and Dominic to Nashville, and then they drove in a Winnebago to my house in Owensboro, Kentucky, which was my hometown. It still is my hometown, even though I don't live there. And then we drove from Kentucky to Los Angeles. We went through Memphis, we went through Texas, we went through New Mexico, Arizona, and Vegas. And those two episodes of The Real World season 2 were, I guess, so good, or I don't know, so much drama that they decided we could make a whole show out of this. And so this is what I always say, Mark. I always say, you know what? I was on the first challenge ever, the Road Rules All Stars.
Mm-hmm.
And so I basically started the challenge, right? And then I was on the Winnebago with Tammy and Dominic, which sparked the whole season Road Rules, the whole series of Road Rules. So I started Road Rules. And really, technically, I started The Real World too, because even though I was on season 1, season 2 really was lame and boring and sucked. So,
So I wanted to ask, as a conservative Christian, how was it for you when you discovered while you were on that RV that Tammy was a Muslim?
she just came out with it. We were sitting down in a Shoney's restaurant. If you're not a Southerner, you probably don't know what Shoney's is, but we were having a breakfast buffet, and she just I can't remember exactly the comment that sparked it, but she was, I think Dominic was talking about drinking and can I get a beer here? I'm like, no, you can't get a beer here. You're at Shoney's, dude. It's probably a dry county. And they're like, what's a dry county? I'm like, these guys have not been to the South very much. And then we started talking about, faith and why I didn't drink. And she said, oh, well, I'm a Muslim. I'm like, really? Well, what's that exactly? And it made it look like I didn't know what a Muslim was. But what I was actually wanting her to do was explain herself, because we had already had some conversations that lended me to believe she wasn't very religious at all. And I wanted her to explain what her Muslim faith was to her, because I was kind of calling bull, And well, I mean, and turns out she wasn't really Muslim. She was searching. She's a born again Christian today, and I think that's wonderful. But we were just getting to know each other. We were just getting to know each other, and she said, "I'm a Muslim." I'm like, I don't really see any fruit of a Muslim faith in you. So explain that to me. But they made it look like I didn't know what it was. I was very naive and stupid, which they did a lot on my show. It was like, oh, here's 18-year-old. Listen, he's never left Kentucky. He doesn't know anything. And I'm like, well, they don't know much about me. I was born in Wisconsin. My father was an FBI agent. I lived in Phoenix, Arizona. I lived in Baltimore, Maryland. And I did a lot of my older growing up in Kentucky. So I'm from Kentucky, but I had probably been more well-traveled than any of those roommates that I had. But they didn't make it look like. The storyline was John was a very sheltered, naive kid, and it's fine, whatever.
I saw like interesting dynamics between you two specifically, where you were kind of saying, at least in the confessionals that they showed us, that she expected, because of your background and where you grew up and not experiencing somebody like her before, that you were just going to have certain stereotypes, and then kind of treating you as if you had the stereotypes without any kind of evidence from you.
Well, it's funny that I was being stereotyped, where usually folks like me are accused of stereotyping, and so the tables were kind of turned there. Interesting that you noticed that. But there's a storyline in entertainment that white kids from the South are racist and prejudiced. They didn't tell the story on the homecoming, the 30-year homecoming reunion we just had, but I actually have a black son. I've been a youth pastor, so let me clarify. I've taken this young man in and mentored him as a father figure, and I Skyped him several times while we were on the homecoming, and they just didn't show it because it didn't fit the storyline that John has a young man that he treats like a son that's Black American. And I've done a lot of mission work. It's what I've been doing for last 20 years is mentoring young people, specifically some in East Africa. So I got a lot of kids in Kenya and Uganda that look to me as a father figure. And so, they don't tell that story. Well, yeah, it's amazing. And it's like a story I wanted to tell, but it's not a story that, the network or it doesn't fit the storyline of, white country singer John, embracing Black people all over the world. It's not part of the narrative that they had. But a little side note, Tammy and I love each other. Like, I don't talk to her every day, but we have a very unique friendship. We support one another. There were times at the homecoming that we just had where she would text me and tell me, give me a heads up on something that was coming from a producer. And,
Hmm.
she, she didn't want me to be caught off guard. So she'd text me and then she'd walk by me and she'd go, look at your phone. And so it was kind of a heads up. They're getting ready to set you up. You're getting ready to be on the hot seat. And I just want you to know. And so, I text her here and there and just say, thinking about you, love you. And she's doing very, very well, obviously. But, side note, we were supposed to hate each other and we don't. We love each other.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I kind of had some notes about your original season, which I'll probably get back to, but Homecoming. I want to know how you felt going into that scenario, knowing that you were going to have to relive
Yeah.
a bunch of huge moments
Well,
that happened.
they were a little hazy on the details. It wasn't super easy to convince everybody to come back and do the reunion. Okay. I was pretty eager to. I knew one day the phone would ring and they would want us to come back. I just figured, hey, it might be 20 years or 25 or 50 years, but one day they're going to want to get us back together. And they did. But not everybody in my season came. Dominic and Aaron didn't come. And
Right.
we were like at risk of getting skipped over as a season because they didn't come. They wanted everybody. And they didn't really tell us how traumatic it was going to be and what they were going to do. We'd seen the first one, so the one they did in New York, but they didn't have huge drama. Well, other than Becky and Kevin spent 3 episodes arguing about race, which was depressing. But I just they're good people. They're friends of mine, and I'm like, can you guys get on with it? There's a great show and there's great interaction to have here, but you guys, and really.
Are you referring to all your house guests, or you mean Aaron and Dominic?
Well, Aaron and Dominic did not want to do it. They
Okay.
didn't do it. But, all
The
we had
rest of
seen was
everyone.
the first season of The Real World, the first reunion that the New York had. And, we were watching it. And so we knew they were going to play clips. We knew that they were going to rehash old conversations. And we had a lot of things, that were very controversial, memorable, that we knew they were going to show. We didn't expect that clip of the hallway to happen in the second
Right
day.
away.
The second day. But they had to do that. They had to do that because if we had gone through that, and it wasn't right off the bat, people would have like, I don't think we would have made it to that. They wanted that for sure. That was the big humdinger revisit. And I think if they had waited a week, shoot, David might have already left the house by then. They had to have everybody present. So they did it right off the bat. But, and then the New Orleans, they did a homecoming, and instead of incoming messages, where they ding and you got to come sit by the TV and watch the incoming clip, they call it incoming message. Well, the New Orleans cast started calling it incoming trauma. And that's really a good description of what was going on there. We're about to have trauma revisited and you're getting ready to look like a fool on television again.
Yeah, I really love Homecoming. I couldn't imagine myself.
Yeah, it's more fun to watch than to be on. I can tell you that.
It's more fun to watch than to be on, and it's nice to be a fly on the wall, but I wouldn't really want to be in the room. So
very, very, very stressed and very, very traumatic, literally traumatic, dramatic and traumatic, because reality TV has changed so much. 30 years ago when we did The Real World and the challenge was starting, if the camera crew missed something you said or did, they just missed it. Nowadays, it's okay, everybody sit down, let the cameras get set. Beth, now would be a good time for you to say to John, blah, 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 blah. It's like, that's not real. That's not spontaneous, So reality TV is just a lot different than it was too. So we were getting reused to that.
What was it like for you specifically, reliving the trauma of all of you in the room watching the hallway incident?
Well, it was horrible because it was, kind of worse than we remembered it after 30 years. I was standing there, but I remember it happening and I remember some details. I remember, Tammy slamming the door on Beth's head. And, I just didn't remember me being right there laughing and watching. And then I'm like, oh gosh, that really looks bad. Tammy had gone to bed and she said, look, if the phone rings and it's my boy Marlon, you come and get me. And so the phone
Mhm.
rang, and it was Marlon Wayans, okay, that she was waiting
Oh
to
wow.
borrow. Yeah, yeah, he wasn't famous at the time, but she said, John, because I always answered the phone because I was nosy. And, we didn't have cell phones back then, okay? This is 1993. I got a cell phone in 1998. So we had a landline, which was a payphone just for decor. So the phone rang. I run to it. Hey, is Tammy there? I'm like, she's gone to bed. May I ask who's calling? This is Marlon. Oh, she said if Marlon called, let me go get her. So I went in there. I'm like, Marlon's on the phone. She's like, John, are you lying? I'm like, no, he's on the phone. So, you know, she's not dressed and she's in bed. And so she's wrapping the blanket around her and she's going to go talk to Marlon on the phone. Well, I'm like, oh, she's not. I'm tugging on the blanket. And she's like, John, I'm getting ready to kill you. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
all right, ha ha, funny, funny, joke's over. But really, he's on the phone. Well, David, takes it to the extreme, and what happened happened. Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah. So
Well, here's the thing. I'll say it really briefly. What David did was really really bad. But if someone else had done it, it would have been okay. You're a big jerk. Don't ever do that again. But we had really that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Really, it's more than a straw, but we were really fed up with him anyway. We were looking for a way to not have to deal with him for the duration of the rest experience.
I would say that's something I love about Homecoming is seeing growth, and the growth that I saw in you specifically. I see you as the same person in a way then and now in terms of your value system and everything like that. But you kind of snapped back at people a lot more in the original one.
Hmm.
There was even a clip that I saw that you were like, "Don't argue with me because I always win," or something to that effect.
Well, I was an 18-year-old that had just graduated high school. Okay, literally,
Yeah,
I graduated high school at 17 in May. I turned 18 in July, and in January, I was living on MTV in the real world. Everyone else was 25 years old, 23 years old, 24 years old, 21 years old. I was 18 years old. Really, I was, barely 18. And yeah, I had that chip on my shoulder. And I was really defensive for a lot of reasons.
but in
I
your defense, you were people were talking what they call bullying today. You could
Yes,
say a lot of that was
yes,
going on.
yes. They were, yeah, yeah. Anti-bullying campaign was not there yet, and so yes, I was being attacked, and
Yeah,
and I realized right off the bat that I was being stereotyped, and I realized right off the bat that I was on MTV, and these guys that are making the show aren't going to protect me; they're going to make me look stupid. So my bark was there. Yeah, I was very defensive and responsive and yeah, yeah. I mean, I was 18. I'm 48 years old right now. I was 47 when I did the reunion. So, you learn a lot about how to handle people that are different. You learn a lot about how to handle people that you think are attacking you. Now, when I'm attacked, I'm just like, you're kind of an idiot. Like back up. Like you can disagree and we can still love each other, but you're just being attacking right now. You're bullying. Yeah, I was bullied, and I think it backfired because a lot of the public um their heart went out to me. Like they had my back. They're like, John, I don't agree with like most everything you say, but you were really nice and kind, and they bullied you. They were. I'm
yeah.
like, so I mean, I think it came through really, and the production and the producers and the network actually really liked me, and my edit was really favorable. I mean, when people come up to me on the street, it wasn't, hey, you were a real jerk. I don't like you. And what were you thinking when you did X, Y, Z? I didn't get any of that. It was like, you're so nice, John. I feel like I've grown up with you. I'm like, that's good. My other roommates didn't really enjoy that kind of, rapport with the public.
I had to mention that I was very impressed in Homecoming with your ability to kind of absorb the emotions that were coming at you because there was so many of them
Yeah.
from so many of your roommates there.
Yeah.
Just I'm not really trying to harp on the hallway thing, but just in terms of how you handled David's emotions and Tammy's emotions when it could have been a big
Yeah.
explosion.
Well, there's a lot of things. Yeah. And I meant to say this earlier. There was footage that we watched at the homecoming that we never knew. We never knew how David was wounded and the meeting with the producers afterwards and how he broke down. See, we didn't see any of that. And, you know, our heart went out to him. Like he's a brother. He's a roommate. He's back in the house with us. Like we've all had to live this life and be those people on TV. So, I mean, that was like 30 years ago. And so I think we got to the point where like, oh wow, Tammy's not the only one that was hurt here. I mean, Beth had a really hard rap too, and you're like, well, she deserved it. Okay, well, maybe she said something really stupid in a hallway 30 years ago. You're going to hate her for the rest of her life? You're going to throw stones at her on Twitter, really, for some one mistake that she said in a hallway? Are we going to, oust David out of our life and off this planet because of one thing he did in a hallway 30 years ago on a television show that was, a really stressful situation that we know he would take back in a heartbeat if he could? No, I mean, there's got to be grace and forgiveness and a group hug that says we were all stupid. We were all stupid, and we're going to be stupid again, and we got to give grace. And I mean, that's just if you don't learn that from an experience like the real world about life, then you've missed a really valuable life experience, because that's what life is giving each other grace when they blow it, loving people that are nothing like you, even though you disagree with them wholeheartedly about a very passionate issue. Okay. You gotta still love each other. We're on this planet. We're brothers and sisters, and you gotta forgive, you gotta give grace, and you gotta be able to say, man, there's a lot about that person that irritates me, but I love them and I wish good for them. And I'm going to give them grace because I actually need that grace also.
Yeah, I think that you're such a voice of reason. I feel like you're such a voice of
Wow.
reason. I was
I
gonna
try.
jump in. I was gonna jump into when the topic of abortion came up, and you were like, even though I don't agree with
Yeah.
this,
Right.
I still love you and I'm gonna support you through that. You said that
Yeah.
both on the original season
I
and
did.
when the topic came back up.
It was a good answer then. I said the right thing about my stance and the way I wanted to represent myself back in 1993 on MTV as an 18-year-old. I was proud of what I said about the issue of abortion. And I knew it would come back up. I knew the hallway incident would come back up. We did our homecoming before the Supreme Court reversed Roe versus Wade, so it
Mhm.
became a huge hot topic again. Uh, right around the time we did the reunion, but they revisited Tammy's abortion on the show. Okay, well, I'm a evangelical minister. Like, I've been spreading the gospel across the planet, working at churches, mentoring young people, spreading the gospel. So, I'm very pro life because of who the Lord is, and because I feel like He creates life. But here's the thing: Tammy's a life that He also created. So am I going to condemn her for what her words, categorizes as a mistake that she made? And then come to find out, we had four females at the homecoming. All four of them said that they'd had an abortion before Tammy did on the show. All of them. So 100% of my female roommates that I love dearly as sisters have now said, Tammy, we didn't have it within us to discuss with you on television when you were going through that, and we're so sorry, but we also went through that in some capacity. The circumstances were different, but a traumatic thing. And I'm sitting there watching this unfold, and I hadn't heard that. And I'm sitting here watching these ladies that I love and care about cry and talk about something really traumatic and difficult that they went through. And I just wanted them to know that, you know, I still have a different opinion on the issue, but that's beside the point, because right now you're hurting and I love you. And if I'm going to say I'm pro life because life is important, then these four people that I love as sisters, their lives are important too. And if they're hurting because of something they went through, I've got to also be consistent and say, you're important. You're important. And there's grace and forgiveness for you. And yeah, I mean, that's the way I really feel. That's not a patent answer that I have. That's like, I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm going to need my friends to embrace me and say, well, I don't agree with the stupid thing you did, but I do love you dearly, John, and I'm gonna support you, and I'm gonna walk through this wound with you.
I love that answer. I was amazed at something that happened on the homecoming season where there was this comment that was put on you all these years, which I know you know where I'm going with this one, about the Confederate flag. And then David started laughing when the clip played and said, well, John actually never said that. And I
Right.
was like, okay, this is the moment where John is going to lose it. but it
And
didn't happen.
I would have been well within my right. So you want to say, okay, David, um, why did you say that? Well, I know why he said it, because there's a camera pointed at his face. And he's got a white roommate that's from the South, and he's expected to say stuff like that. I've been there. I mean, I've been there. I know what it's like to have when somebody points a camera at you, you've got to say something outrageous. It's just this feeling. That's why reality TV has changed so much, is because all these people on there, they know that they're going to be famous. They know they're going to be TV stars. We didn't know that. We didn't know what we were doing. And so all of a sudden I gotta say something that's worthy of television. I've got to be outrageous. I've got to be controversial. And here we're all stereotypical, okay?
Hmm.
Black, white, whatever, whatever background you come from, we stereotype each other, and media does. And I just think he folded under the pressure of being on a television show and being, under a stressful situation with this white roommate that he's nothing like. And you know what he asked me? He asked me if he could hang up a Confederate flag. I'm like, boy, if I said that, that was the dumbest thing I've ever said in my life. I hope I never said that. And if I did, wow, wow. Because there's this thing in the South about, Southern pride. And a lot of
Hmm.
times when it's Southern pride, we love the South, we love our home, we're country and that's just the way it is. And we're going to fly our rebel flag. It's like, that flag doesn't really stand for what you just said. And so, be proud of the South, but, lose the flag, because the flag stands for a lot of hurt and racism and hatred and things that, you don't want to associate with, Southern people. Yeah, I just, I appreciated him clearing the air, but what I
Hmm.
really think they wanted was a whole episode of John losing his marbles, going off on David. Then we have this white guy and this black guy that hate each other again, and man, it's going to be great television. And I didn't give it to him. I'm like, you know what, David, you've been through enough today. We just rewatched the hallway incident. Okay, so I think we've all had enough trauma for today. Thank you for clearing that up, because my roommates for 30 years never brought that up to me. And they just
Hmm.
thought that I had said that. And so, here's the thing, they still loved me. Like, they didn't hold it against me. Viewers, I never once had somebody come up to me in 30 years and say, I can't believe you said that to David. Never. And even you, I mean, you want to do this podcast with me as a
Right.
black American that lives in New York, you're saying, hey, I thought it was weird, that David said that you'd said this, and you didn't. I mean, you didn't hold that against me, even
Right.
having thought that I said that.
Right.
So
Right.
there's a lot more of that that needs to take place. If a white Southerner says something really idiotic and stupid, give them grace, because we're all idiotic and stupid, especially when you're on a reality show and there's a camera pointed at you.
I always say that. I Some people say that I'm too kind of nice with house guests on shows that I watch, reality shows that say certain things.
So that, what do they want you to do? They want you to get us on the podcast and crucify us?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that makes for a great show. It's like, but I mean, that guest, if they're defending, their idiocy, and they're still being a hateful jerk, then you could say, you know what, you haven't changed, you're an idiot. But if that person's saying, you know what, I did a lot of things on TV that are on tape that I wish I could erase, or it's not the way I feel. I don't know why I said that, or it's not the way I feel anymore. Or I mean, there's just there's this repentance and remorse thing that happens in a person's heart that you go, all right, you know what, you did something horrible, but you're sorry. So
I get a feeling that you're somebody who sees the best in people. Would you say
I
that's
try.
accurate? You
I
try?
try. I don't think I always have. When I was 18 and I was on the show, when we kicked David out of the house, I was really glad. I mean, I didn't want to finish the experience with him. I thought it was horrible the way he behaved. So, but as I grew as an adult and I had more life experiences and I made more mistakes myself and needed forgiveness and grace, and then I also extended that to others. So when they called and said, you want to do a reunion, can you help us find your roommates? I'm like, well, I hadn't talked to David in years. Let me try to find him on Facebook. And I did. And it took a long time to get in touch with him. And I said, Dave, they want to get the band back together. He's like, they want to invite me, the guy that you threw out of the house. I'm like, apparently so. And so he's like, do you want me to come back? I'm like, yes, of course. I want you to come back and be my roommate. like David wasn't my housemate. He was my roommate. He slept 4 feet away from me in the bed next to me. And they didn't show this, I don't think, on the homecoming, or maybe I don't know, but they did. But when he walked in, I'm like, "So David, you gonna be my roommate again? You know, I saved
But
your bed for you."
but what they did show was when they asked, when you guys were playing that game, and they asked which one of you would you guys pick to live with, and
Yeah.
David said you immediately, and I was like, wow.
Well, man, yeah, he did, because he felt love from me, and I mean, okay, I'm not bragging, but let's face it, out of everybody on the show, I'm the easiest one to get along with. So that's why, I mean, if I was going to pick a roommate, I'd pick John, because he's going to be nicer than the rest of them, right? Maybe, hopefully. But it was crazy. You just having said that, they showed the roommates, and they said, well, who would they pick? I remember sitting there having that conversation, but I don't remember what was on TV or not, because there's so many things that didn't make it on the show. I watched
Right.
it, but when you lived through all of it and you experienced all of it, you can't really remember what was on the show and what wasn't. You just remember all of it. But curiously, Beth said she would choose me,
Hmm.
and Tammy said she would choose me. She said, but it was a passing comment. It was, well, John, but if not John, I would choose you, Beth. And
Yes,
then
because
that
I would have fun with her. Yeah.
and that was all bull, first of all, but I'm calling bull on that. But I was shocked, because now 3 of the 7 that are sitting here said they would choose me. I'm like, that's good. That's good. I should run for mayor of the house or something.
And you're like, back in the day, they used to make fun of me for just not going out with
Yeah.
them and saying
Yeah.
that I'm
Well,
not
yeah.
fun enough.
But they loved me. Yeah.
Yeah.
They loved me. Yeah. And that's what you learn as you grow, is that, yeah, they were poking fun at me, and they were ribbing me, and bullying me at times, but down in their heart, they knew, like Beth would still tell you that I'm her best friend. Irene and I are still very, very close. Tammy and I are still very close in a weird kind of way. Dominic's birthday was yesterday. I texted him happy birthday. We've reconnected. I mean, I have a relationship with everybody in that house,
Wow.
a close one. But
Wow.
but most of these people on these reality shows, they deal with the experience, and then they don't ever talk to who they didn't like ever again. And
I
that's
noticed
not
that's a big, yeah.
that's not the experience. You missed out on the whole cool part if you don't form relationships that are long lasting with these people that you did this crazy thing with, and that are nothing like, intentionally nothing like you. That's where the value of this thing, and that's why I had nothing to do with naming the show, but I think The Real World is a great name, because this is what life is. This is what the world is like. We're all very, very different. We come from passionate stances and different backgrounds, and how can we coexist in a house on MTV?
What you said actually made me think of the following homecoming season, New Orleans, where it wasn't like, oh, I talked to Beth and I spoke to this one and I spoke to that one. A lot of them were like, I didn't speak to any of them in 20 years. And now we're just going to show up in the house and see what happens.
And you saw
And
what happened. It
it
was
was
a mess.
very
It
tense.
was it was a nightmare. There was no relationships to cultivate. It was just, okay, you made me so mad 25 years ago that I never want to speak to you again. And in fact, I don't like being in your presence now. And when this is over, I'm not going to speak to you ever again. It's like, oh, great show,
Yeah.
awesome. And it was a messy show to watch. And apparently, that's what the media talks about, and that's what high ratings are. But as I'm friends with each one of those cast members, and as friends with them, my heart goes out to them, because what a horrible, traumatic thing to go through again.
I wanted to know how you guys felt, or how you felt when David decided to leave your season of Homecoming.
Well, it was 2 days before we were done. We were only in the house for 2 weeks, so um, I would say, with a lot of love for David, I would say that he probably waited too long to leave. He probably needed to. He lasted about 10 days. That's what he lasted in 1993, and that's what he lasted in 2021. About 10 days is what he can handle in that house before he pieces out. And but I mean, at that point, Tammy's husband was coming to the house looking to fight
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
It was very volatile. It was getting ready to be really ugly, and he needed to go. I mean, when he was packing his bag, uh, I wasn't talking him into staying. I was like, "Oh man, I hate to see you leave like this,
A
but
part of
I'll
me,
help you carry your bags."
a part of me, like the over analytical side of my brain, felt like he felt like leaving was his power this time, since
Yeah,
he, yeah,
right,
rather than
right.
getting kicked
No,
out.
and he even said that. It's the last thing he said to us. I'm leaving on my own terms this time. It's like, man, good luck. I mean, we love David. I mean, each of us loves David and wishes good things for him. But living in a house with him is hard. Living in a house with any of us is hard. Living in a house with me is hard. I mean, living on television in a house is hard, and it messes with your psychological state because it's like, how to look yesterday looked really bad when I said such and such. How are they going to edit that? What if I say the right thing, the compassionate thing that represents me very, very well, but they edit it all wrong and make me look foolish? And who's going to be the popular one? It's just like, oh my gosh, you can drive yourself crazy.
I'm so glad you said that, because I actually have been wanting to ask somebody from one of these shows about the mental health aspects of
Well,
being
let
a,
me put it to you this way. You do a 700 question psych eval before you go and do these shows now.
wow.
Yeah, and it's, have you ever thought of harming yourself? Have you been on real reality TV before? What did you think of your image and how have you dealt with that if it was negative? I mean, just on and on and on and on and
Really?
on and on. A very extensive and invasive questioning because they're covering themselves. Because reality stars, they go crazy. I mean, look at them. Okay, look at them. There's a lot of reality stars that don't do well with the reality fame, and it is fame. This is what I tell everybody, especially as a person that's been working with young people. I'm like, I used to be on MTV, and they're like, oh, ridiculousness. I'm like, well, it used to be cool. Well, yeah, it used to be way different. And so I was on a reality show. Oh, like Survivor. I'm like, okay, before there was Survivor, and before there was the Kardashians, and before there was Jersey Shore, there was us on the Real World. And they're like, oh, never heard of it. I'm like, well, we were the business. We were it. Saturday Night Live made a skit about my season of The Real World. I mean, that's how cultural, relevant, and famous that we
You
were.
on Beavis and Butthead?
I was on Beavis and Butthead,
Yeah.
not my roommates, me. Yeah, so that was impressive. And Celebrity Deathmatch and all this, just crazy. But back in 1993, they hired a psychologist for us after the show, and we'd go visit.
Oh,
And
after. Okay, I was just about to
after,
ask that.
and hey, if you want to talk about the experience, and it's like all of us were like, why would we need that? I mean, thanks, but no thanks. But they were covering themselves. Now it's so much more extensive. It's psych eval before. It's security in the house wearing all black. You saw them when Tammy's husband came in the house, and come to find out they weren't there to necessarily keep people off the property because no one really knew we were shooting. They didn't even announce that we were doing it until it was done. So no one was going to come and kind of intrude, but they had security there to protect us from one another. Like if David and I would have gotten into a fist fight, or Tammy and David, then they would have stepped in and not allowed it. But that's all the change. But yeah, but very, very, very careful psych eval going on with reality TV
Did you have a psychologist available to you during this time in Homecoming?
now. Not specifically that I can name, but I felt like if I needed one, they would have got one. Like
Okay.
it was like we were very well taken care of. It's like, hey, we want to order out. Can we order out? Because COVID was still going on in LA. We couldn't really leave, and so we were in that house for 2 weeks. So we're like, can we order takeout? And they're like, yeah, anything you want, just order it. So we caught on really fast that whatever we requested was available to us. And so I feel like if we'd have said, hey, I really need to talk to somebody, I'm going out of my mind, that it would have been available. They take really, really good care of you as a cast member.
Oh, that's awesome. So to transition into something a little different, I know that music is a huge passion of yours. So I didn't know that you actually wanted to just do that full time, leaving the real world originally.
Yeah.
So what exactly happened with that?
Well, I mean, I was immediately famous. In 1993, I literally, from 1993 until about 2000, I couldn't go anywhere. Now, there weren't 40 seasons of The Real World. There was us in New York and San Francisco. Well, on a Saturday, they would show 22 episodes of The Real World back to back to back on a marathon. So back in the 90s, when you turned your TV on, there wasn't streaming. You ended up on MTV.
Hmm.
And if you ended up on MTV, there was a really good chance that my version of The Real World was being shown for hours. I couldn't go anywhere. I mean, it'd be like if you're sitting in a restaurant and Kim Kardashian walked in, sat down. That's how recognizable we were, especially with the
Wow.
hat. And a lot of people are like, I thought it was you, and I wasn't sure. And then when you spoke, I recognized your voice immediately. And so we were very recognizable. I mean, we were everywhere. And I used that to further my music career. I started doing concerts, started opening for big acts, country music acts. And it was like, hey, come to the concert. Alabama's performing at the state fair. And by the way, the guy from The Real World's opening up for them. And so it was just awesome. And I was on Capitol Records signed me in Nashville. And
Hmm.
I was, traveling around on a big tour bus, and I was living the big star dream, but I never had a hit record. And so Capitol actually dropped me off the label, and I was trying to regroup. And when I was trying to regroup, it just wasn't happening. And so I started leading music at a church. As a job, and because I love the Lord and I love church, and I ended up doing that for the next 15, 20 years. And I just one day in the shower I was thinking, well, I guess you're done singing country music. Are you happy with that? And I thought, no, I'm not happy with that. I'm still good at it. I'm still passionate about it. I'm not done singing yet. And so I wrote the song, I Ain't Done Singing Yet. And MTV called me and said, you want to do a reunion? I'm like, yes, I do. And I want to sing my song on the show, and I want to use this to let's get going again.
That's awesome. So, did you rediscover a passion for singing, or was it something that you were still doing while you were a youth pastor?
I was doing it a little bit, but I wasn't really. I don't know if rediscover the passion was, but I kind of unsuppressed it. I had just pushed it to the back burner because I had been discouraged. I was very discouraged, and I wasn't having success, and I was felt like I wasn't good enough, and boy, I just don't guess it's ever going to happen for me. So I just avoided it. And then one day I just said, you know what, life's too short, and you're getting old fast. Let's go. Don't put this on the back burner. This is your life, and you get to decide what you want to do. And I decided I still wanted to sing country music.
Are you okay with answering some questions here?
Yeah, of course, sure.
Okay. So, I'm going to start up here.
I'm the easy reality guy. I can do anything you want. I'm agreeable
Okay.
to anything.
So, it said, I'm curious why David decided to come back if he wasn't sure what was going to happen, especially between Tammy.
Well, I think that he wanted to mend it all. It was a horrible thing that he'd been labeled this guy that did the blanket thing. The word rapist had been thrown out, and he was the first person to ever be kicked off of a reality show. Okay, he was forever the black guy that got kicked off of the show. That's who he had to live with, who he had to
Right.
be and live with. So I think he thought, this is my chance to come back and say, guys, that was a really big, stupid, huge thing for all of us, and I bear the brunt of it. Of course, I did the thing, but can we come full circle, and can I have some closure to that?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's what he was hoping, and we did. I think we got there with that a little bit, but then something else blew up. I think he wanted to come back to make amends, and I think he expected other people to make amends and apologies, which they did. Um, and I think he just wanted a second chance.
Honestly, John, watching it a second time, because I watched it back to do this interview,
Mm,
there were times when he looked happy and like he was like immersed with whatever the group was doing,
yeah.
and even saying things that he was glad to be part of the group with the bowling.
Well, yeah, and I'll say this. This is very, very obvious, but I'll say it on your podcast here. And David, if you're watching, then you know where I'm coming from on this. We David has substance abuse issues, and we want him to get through that. And that's why one minute he's the happiest, go luckiest, most agreeable, easy, and fun to be around, and then a split second later, I don't know if his addictions kicked in or what, but he had this personality that could flick like a switch, and he could be irate and unpredictable. And you know, cigarette, nicotine addiction, alcohol addiction, possibly some other things going on too. And you didn't know which David you were going to get. So one minute he was very, very smiley and happy and awesome to be with. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's great. Why did we do this to you? And then the next minute you're like, oh my goodness, you did it to yourself. Why are you acting like a crazy person right now?
I
And
feel like you must. I was gonna ask you that too. Do you have experience dealing with people with substance issues? Because that night where he had the problem with Glenn, and Glenn was really upset, you did a great job of just de-escalating Glenn, and then
well,
also,
okay,
yeah,
you know, for people that didn't watch the show or are too young to have watched the show, or you watched it, let me remind you, Glenn replaced David.
yes,
When David left the house 30 years ago, we interviewed 3 people. Glenn was his replacement. So Glenn became my roommate. So when we did a homecoming, crazily, Glenn had never lived with David. Glenn had, I don't even sure he had met David. If they had, it was brief. Irene had never met Beth A. See, Beth A replaced Irene. So you had a homecoming and a reunion of people who had never lived together. And Glenn had said before we got there, I talked to him on the phone. We were excited, and hey, is this going to happen or is it not? And we've been in touch, and he said, "I can't wait to spend time with David. I think he's a great guy. I can't wait."
wow,
You know, I wasn't there for the hallway thing, and I got nothing against the guy. I can't wait to be his friend. On the third night, David threw a pear or an apple or something out of the fruit bowl at him and hit him in the chest.
yeah,
And he said, he literally, I'm gonna throw him off the roof. I'm gonna kill the guy. And I this wasn't on the show, but I looked at Glenn. I said, "Oh, you're finding David hard to live with, are you?" Interesting, Glenn. So yeah, I mean, Glenn was yeah, and I had to tell Glenn. I was like, Glenn, bruh, this is who we're dealing with. And then yeah, I told David, I'm like, bruh, how can I pray for you? Like,
yeah. They
if
showed
you knew
that
for sure I
moment.
was gonna pray for you, what would you ask me? And he's like, no comment. I'm like, okay, well, I love you, and you're 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 off the hinges right now, and I'm worried about you on the roof right now. And yeah, I mean, I've been a minister in churches, so I've learned to deal with people that were needing counseling a little bit.
Yeah, this is a comment I just wanted to acknowledge here from Proxima. Thank you for the super chat. I remember the original Real World series I started watching with the LA cast. So good to see John on the original version and the reunion. I hope he's doing well.
I'm doing well, thank you, very much. It's funny, the Real World New York was a crazy idea, and they didn't know how it was going to work, and it worked. I mean, it was a neat show, and then our show worked too, but it was also nuts. So I mean, the popularity continued to increase. San Francisco more so, and just as the Real Worlds went on, I'd say through season 8 or 10, they just kept increasing. And then it was like old hat. Survivor had come out, and Big Brother, and all these other reality shows. Real World kind of became old hat. But the first 4, 5, 6 seasons,
Were
eight,
just
nine,
huge. I heard Eric describe it like that too.
it was so crazy. Yeah. I mean, Eric's a good friend of mine now. I mean, I love him so much as a brother. We were actually on the very first challenge together,
I
and
saw.
yeah, I had a lot of fun. Eric is a beautiful person to be around. Just pleasant, very, very pleasant. Great dude. Love you, Eric. But he was the first reality show ever. He was the
Mhm.
first reality star ever. I mean, he
Mhm.
was the first one that you saw that walked into the house in New York and said, "I'm a king. Oh my goodness, this is where I'm going to live." And then here came Julie, here come Becky, but Eric is the OGest reality star that there is. He is,
It's
and just a
it's
great dude.
amazing. Beth S said she was fangirling when she saw him, and it's like,
That's why she wanted to be on the Real World, is because she
yeah,
wanted to meet Eric Nies. It's like, well, you're not going to meet him because he was on the show already. So, I mean, we ended up meeting him at the MTV Music Video Awards, but and then we ran into him a lot since then and formed a friendship. But yeah, she was still is very enamored with Eric.
you know what I felt was interesting though. A lot of people, because I more knew Beth for the challenge than
Yeah,
for the, the house, and you seem to get
Well,
along with her well, and a lot of other people didn't.
this is the best way it's been put. I didn't say it, but I'm going to repeat it. Beth on the Real World is totally different than Beth on the Challenge. But Beth got put on the challenge in the very first place because they saw glimpses of who Beth could be. I mean, she is a spitfire, right?
Hmm.
She causes drama where drama doesn't exist. Have you noticed that?
Hmm.
Just like David and Tammy in the hallway. I can't believe you said that to her. That's something a rapist would say. Wow, that wasn't even there, and you took it
Yeah.
there. And
Yeah.
then on the challenge, she does the same thing.
Yes.
And she's like my sister, so I mean, she's my ride or die. But she on the challenge, there's like no drama, just friendly competition. She'll go stir something up that doesn't exist, and it's
Yep.
like, Beth, why do you do that? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, this is why people don't like you. And she's like, well, I want to be liked. I'm like, stop it, stop what you're doing. And but her intentions are good, but man, she stirs up the pot, doesn't she?
You said that to her on the homecoming season when Tammy was revisiting that conversation with you
Did
about
I?
virginity, and then she said, "Oh, you have a daughter," you
Yeah.
know, and you were like, "Wait a minute, Beth,
Yeah.
you were
You're
supposed to
funny
be my
because you
friend."
remember everything. You remind me. Yeah, you said that. I'm like, oh yeah. Well, did that make it on the show? I can't remember what was on the show. Yeah. So like Tammy's like, so John, are you still a virgin? Are you married? Are you gonna get married? And Beth was so happy that she was getting to have a civil conversation with Tammy because they never did. They just had no relationship. They just avoided each other. And so
Yeah.
she's sitting on the couch. She's like, oh, yeah, Tammy, don't you have a single daughter for John? And I'm like, Beth, shut up. Like, what are you doing right now? You're just having casual conversation with Tammy because you're so glad you get to talk to Tammy finally that you're like trying to hook me up with her single daughter. I'm like, you're crazy right now. Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, Beth, are you dumb? What are you doing? She's like, well, I don't know. And here's the thing. It's what I said earlier. Why did David say the thing he said about me? Um, not because I said it. And why did Beth really say that to Tammy? Don't you have a single daughter for John? Not because she really wanted me to connect with Tammy's daughter, but because there was a camera pointed at her and she didn't know
Yeah.
what else to say and she was giddy and she had to say something. It was just there's this pressure to say something and be relevant, and it just makes you look really silly.
Yeah. 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 So I'm gonna get a couple more of these questions in here. Why didn't Aaron and Dom come to the reunion, or did you not know why?
Oh, I know why. I'll answer the question.
Okay.
And let me, I mean, I'm not trying to be smart when I say this. Did you watch the show? Like, you want to know why they didn't come and be on the reunion? Because it was an embarrassment to be
It
on.
would be a
Like,
lot of
I'm sure it
incoming
was,
messages.
yeah, incoming trauma. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Dominic doesn't want to be the guy from the real world anymore. He's in the entertainment business in Los Angeles, and he has a great high profile job. Aaron owns his own business and travels the world and has grown children and a beautiful wife. They have no benefit to coming back on there and looking like a fool with Tammy and John again. I mean, it just could have been detrimental. And they paid us well to do the homecoming, and I needed the money, frankly, and I needed the exposure because I was trying to relaunch my music career. And for me, it was a valuable experience. I like being on the Real World and the Challenge because I like who I am on there. To be honest with you, I like who I am. And
Awesome.
I like doing podcasts like this where I get feedback and, hey, you didn't look so good here, but man, you seem like a nice guy. I mean, I like that. It's enjoyable for me. So I had nothing to lose. But there are roommates that had something to lose, and I
Yes.
totally understand that if you don't need the money and you don't need the trauma, then don't come.
Yeah, because you want to know something? Ayana was telling me that her time was even after yours, but she was even saying that when she started, there was not the same kind of social media pressure. There was
Right.
not the same kind of thing about the fans, flooding your Instagram and all those kinds of things.
Right.
So,
No,
yeah.
I've only been on Instagram since 2012. Okay. And so since I did the reunion, Paramount got me the blue check and everything, and Twitter 2009. I don't even think I had a Facebook until like 2006 or something,
Mm.
7. There wasn't that pressure. I mean, honestly, we sat at the homecoming and we were like, people are going to rip us to shreds on Twitter. Like Twitter's going to blow up. We're going to be bullied online, and we have been, we continue to be. But in 1993 and throughout the 1990s, there were people on the street that would walk up to you and just be like, "You're a jerk. I didn't like you," and you're like, buzz off. Who cares? No one really asked you to come up to me and tell me what you thought. But and there'd be literally handwritten fan mail that would come to MTV and they'd send to us. And but there wasn't the Twitter pressure. There wasn't the
Oh
social
yeah,
media. And now it's like, you
yeah.
know, people are
It deeply
Beth gets a
impacts
hard rap
people.
on her. Yeah,
Hmm.
it impacts you. We're real people with
Yeah,
real feelings and real psychological thoughts. And when you hear you're this or you're that or I hated you or I wish you would die, some of them say,
yeah.
it's like, man, you can only hear that so much before. I mean, I've got friends of mine that were on the show. I won't mention names, but Challenge and Real World that have called me and they're crying and they don't like what's being said about them on Twitter. And I say, you got to turn Twitter off. You got to either let it roll off of you or like turn it off because there are mean people out there with nothing else to do but sit around and watch these shows and hate you.
Yeah,
And,
for
I'm
sure.
glad people watch the show. I think there's a lot to learn about life and others, and it is entertaining. But if you're only there to hate and tweet, then like you need the psychologist.
I say this all the time. This next question I have here, if Shy says, if you were asked, would you ever do another reality show?
Listen, listen. Thanks for asking. I love being a reality star. I love being on the real world. When they called and said, "Would you do the reunion?" I said yes before they could get it out of their mouth. And they said, "Do you need to think about it?" I said, "I've been thinking about 30 years. I knew you were going to call. If you asked me to do the real world right now and move in with 7 different strangers, I would because I think it's valuable.
Wow, John.
I think, as a matter of fact, I think they should do it. I think they should take me and Ayana and 5 other people from shows that don't know each other.
I'm sold already. I'm
Yeah,
sold
and
already.
and
Just
do
off of
and
you.
and do the real world. I mean,
Yeah,
the challenge and the travel and the road rules is great too. I love it, and I've been part of those.
yeah.
If they called me to do, actually, to be very honest with you, I'm wounded that I haven't been on the All Stars Challenge because I started the challenge,
I would
and
love to see
I
you there.
know I don't have the steroid look like all of the male challengers do, but some of the challenges are puzzles and riddles, and they're not all the time chin ups. Okay, so I would I would love to be back on there. If they called me tomorrow and said, "We want you to be on, the challenge, global ride or die, whatever they're doing," I'd say yes because I've had great times on these shows. I've traveled, I've met friends, I've done things that I would never be able to afford to or be able to do. And I like this. I like Shy your question. I like the fact that we can interact. That Mark, you're having me on here, and I get to talk because I like people. I'm a people person,
I
and
see that.
I like to be seen. I'm gonna tell you a secret about reality stars. Okay, they really love attention and they love being on television. It's fun, and if they
Yeah.
tell you it's not true, they're liars because they got on the show, they stayed on the show, they got on other shows. Reality stars like attention. Period, and it's fun.
So this next question, I like this question here. Did the reunion bring you closer to anyone than you were before the reunion?
I would say it did that for others. It didn't do that for me, and I'll tell you why. Repeat what I said earlier. I have intimate relationships with all of those people. I have very, very close friendships with all of them. So it was another great time. I wouldn't say I'm closer. I mean, maybe because we spent 2 weeks in a house, you're going to be closer to anybody. I mean, I was already close with all of those people. All of them, I was already close with. I would say probably I'm probably closer to Tammy than I was because I went years without speaking to Tammy. We loved each other, but we were just out of touch. Now I'm in touch with her more than I had been. So yes, but again, I had very close relationships with each one of those people, and I'm really the only person in my house that accomplished that. And as I watch some of these other shows, you can just see, well, they don't like each other, so they avoid each other. They click with this person and maybe one other person, and that's who they cling to. But that's not what the experience is about.
I wanted to ask you about, I mean, I know I'm so onto your de-escalation kind of things that you do, but you were officiating wedding, Irene's fourth
Uh-huh.
wedding, and
Right.
right before that, Beth chose to talk about the fact that you didn't officiate her wedding. So
Right.
that could have became a whole moment too.
Well, they wanted it to be. They wanted it to be this whole big fight between John and Beth. Well, John and Beth love each other. Like, honestly, in the last 2 years, from the time that we thought we were going to get to do the reunion until the time that we did it, and then it's been over a year, almost a year and a half since, barely a day goes by that she doesn't text or call me. Like, I mean, I talk to her many times a week. We're close. And so they wanted us to fight on television. I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to. I mean, it's like Beth and I are to a point where we're like, "Hey, stop it! You're annoying the stew out of me, and you're really pissing me off right now." Okay, so and we're not going to have a shouting match. We're not going to have a shouting match on television because that's all they're going to show if we do. Okay, that's
Yes.
going to be in every highlight reel. It's going to be in every promo. Ain't giving it to them. Ain't giving it to
Th-
them.
that really happened with Julie on the next season.
Oh, it really happened with Julie. And I talked to Julie extensively because when they called New Orleans and they're like, hey, we might be doing the homecoming for you, all those kids started calling us. What was it like? How'd this work? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, Julie, just go and be normal. Just be yourself and, you know, chill. And she did the exact opposite. And I'm like, Julie, New Orleans Julie, is awesome. She's like a great person. She's a good friend. I love her. I support her. I would be her roommate. I would be her partner on a challenge. I mean, but man, when I watched the New Orleans homecoming, I'm like, Julie, this is not looking good for you. Like you've got to stop what you're doing. You know why she did it? I'm gonna tell you, Mark. Third time. Because there's a camera pointed at her. Because there's a camera pointed at her, and they're doing a homecoming live on the brand new Paramount Plus streaming network, and there's this pressure to be outrageous.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that is the truest thing that a reality star, if they ever bare their soul and tell you the truth, they probably won't say it, but I'm gonna be straight up with you. I got nothing to lose, and I'm a straight up guy. When they point a camera at you, you do things you would normally never do. You say things you would normally never say because of the pressure to be liked and to be relevant and to be a large part of the show.
I could imagine so. And I feel like people are saying in the comments that these shows are so different now than they were when it started. Something
No
I've
doubt.
noticed was a difference is that, at least from what it looked like, there wasn't really security going on. People could say and do anything, and they would just kind of break it up after the fact.
Yeah.
Like, look at the challenge and the people that were getting in those big fights, like a CT,
He would
multiple.
kill you. If
Yeah,
CT got in a fight with me, he would kill me. I mean, my life would end. I'm kind of a wuss. I'm not a fighter, and he looks like he could, beat
even
up
though you looked
Brennan.
like you were holding your own when David kind of came at you in your original season.
I was wearing rollerblades. I'm sitting there. I'm like, I'm on rollerblades. This guy wants to fight me on television. There's 3 cameras. I'm like, I'm not going to fight on television, not in rollerblades. I mean, it's
He
just like,
said that he said we didn't see it in the footage, but he said that he choked you.
yeah, yeah. Well, he can't, yeah. And of course, Aaron was like, get off him. I'm sitting in this chair. He's choking me. And I'm like, I'm going to have a fight on television. I'm going to stand up and get these rollerblades off and we're going to fight. And I'm probably going to get sent home and I'm going to be canceled. This is before cancel culture. I'm going to be canceled for fighting on TV with the black guy and I'm going to be labeled and, people are going to, that's what the girls are all, they're going to call me Karen. They're going to label me Karen. And, you know, it's just, there's so much pressure. You know, I'm going to get canceled. Like I'm going to be the one that social media and TMZ are canceling. And there's a fear of that. Like you don't want that. Nobody
But for
wants
you to
that.
say now that you would like to do another reality TV show, is it
Immediately.
because you feel so confident about who you are as a person that you
Yeah.
don't think that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm confident who I am as a person. I mean, I don't want that to come across cocky, but I'm confident about who I am and what my values are and my contribution to this planet and life and relationships that I cultivate. I feel like I have something to offer roommates, and I feel like they have something to offer me. I mean, there's a great back and forth rapport that happens. That's why I can sit here and tell you that Ayana, who was your first guest,
Yeah.
I've never met in person, but she chose on a podcast one time to talk about, oh, John on the Homecoming was so inspirational, and then I got his music, and I love his music, and I'm like, who is this? So I
Yeah.
looked her up. I'm like, who is this? And so I contacted her. I'm like, hey, we never met, but thank you for the nice things that you said on this podcast about me. And she's like, yeah, John, I love you. I think you're awesome. I'm like, well, I love you. I think you're awesome. And so now we're friends. Like we've never met in person, but we're back and forth. I text her and I'm like, hey, what's going on in your week? How can I pray for you? And and then she suggests to you that she should have me on the show.
And the funny thing is, she referenced you on my podcast as well in the
Hmm.
interview. And she said that you were an inspiration for her because when she was thinking about coming back on for All Stars, she was like, I'm a different person. I've had 4
Yeah.
kids, not in the
Yeah.
same type of shape that I was in before. I don't know if the cameras are gonna make me look crazy and big and all this stuff. But then
See,
she
you
said,
see what we're thinking? You see what goes through a reality star's mind when they're thinking about being on the show? It's scary. Let me say something. Props to all the females that have gotten on All Stars, because our bodies change. Okay, I've lost 35 pounds, but I thought I looked really fat and hideous on. And here's an example of something that's rude and mean. Somebody said on the Homecoming, they're like, "Oh, all the women look great, but all the men look like they ate the rest of the cast." And I'm like, that's not nice. That's not
wow,
nice. I'm overweight, yeah, and I don't love the way that I looked at the time, and I've lost 35 pounds. But these girls, the women that have gotten on the All Stars, they've had babies, like multiple babies. Let's face it, for Beth, 30 years has passed.
mm-hmm,
Okay, I don't know how many years has passed for the others, but okay, we gain weight as we get older. It's what we do.
yeah,
Okay, some of us are 50 years old at this point, and they're
yeah.
getting out there in spandex and rolling in mud and jumping out of tall buildings, and they don't love the way their body looks, but they risk it. They get on there. What am I going to look like? Am I going to be called fat on Twitter? Am I going to be called Karen? What's going to happen? But props to all the females that get out there and compete, because I know that it's fun to be back on there. I want to be on there with you, but I just think it's brave. I think it's really brave for these to get back on there and go for it.
My viewers are saying they would like to see you on there too.
Come on,
And also, and
start a
also
movement on Twitter.
start a movement on Twitter. And also,
Follow me
somebody
on
asked,
Twitter. I've got like no Twitter followers, and everybody else has like all these thousands.
would you be on a Big Brother season or like a celebrity Big Brother season?
Yeah. Yes, I would. I mean, why would I mean at this point, it's like my roommates that decided not to be on the homecoming. It's like, I don't want to be a reality star. I'm like, okay, I respect that. I'm gonna miss you. I love you. But what I'm thinking is, you're already a reality star. What do you mean you don't want to be a reality star? You were on the second season of The Real World. You are a pioneer of reality television. You've already ruined that. You're a reality star. So get back on there and have fun.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like, it's something that you can't necessarily fully escape.
You can't undo it.
It's a part
I'm
of
always
you.
going to be. Always going to, like Mike the Miz is a huge, huge worldwide superstar. Worldwide superstar and WWE legend. I'm a wrestling fan. And he will always, always be the guy that started on The Real World. I mean, it's just, he is a bigger wrestling superstar than The Real World will ever be. But Tammy's, doing big things and
Yeah.
tons and tons of shows. BET, Apple TV Plus, all this stuff. She's got lots of irons in the fire. Lots of. She's a superstar. She's a reality superstar. But I just saw her today on her Twitter. She said, I started on a show called The Real World on MTV. We're always going to be that person. I mean, you can't escape that. So, I mean, Ralph Macchio, no matter what he does, he's always going to be the Karate Kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Will Smith is always going to be the Fresh Prince from Bel Air. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you don't escape. You go on and do big things and have huge success, hopefully. But
You always
you're
remember where you started from.
I could come back on the All Stars and win the challenge, and I'm still going to be the cowboy from the real world.
I think that's what we loved about seeing you on the Homecoming, because it was like, you know what? All these years have passed by, but it's still the same John. You know,
Well,
all those values that made you
yeah,
so endearing.
yeah. I think I am. I am the same John. Hopefully, a better version.
Of
And
course, like a grown up,
but I
more
mean,
mature
I'm
version.
yeah. I mean, when I got ready to go do the homecoming, they're like, "Are you going to wear your cowboy hat?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's who I am. It's not just who I was; it's who I still am." And you know, go
That's
be yourself.
I yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I feel like that's a really inspirational message, is that you came onto the show and people made fun of you for who you were, the guy with the
Yeah.
Cowboys hat with the Christian values that wasn't like everybody else. But instead of compromising the values to fit in and make people like you more, you're like, I'm just going to be who I am, and who you are has carried you through life to this point, and then we see you again, like, this is who I am still. I bet that lends itself to your position as a youth pastor,
Yeah.
um, as
Well,
an
I mean,
inspiration.
you got to be yourself. You got to be true to because if you get on TV and you fake any aspect of who you really are, you regret it when it airs and people see a misrepresentation of who you really are. Oh, I wish I hadn't said that. That's not really the way I felt. Well, I mean, say the way you feel. I mean, even if it's offensive, say it in a nice way. Because I mean, like with the abortion issue, I mean, I think people sometimes dislike and look unfavorably against Christians and also pro-life people because they express their opinion in a hateful way. It's like if you can express your opinion and it can be really really different than the mass majority of the people, but if you say it kindly and help them really to understand your perspective and don't say it with a heart full of hate, it's going to go further. They're not going to change their mind, but they're going to understand your perspective and they're going to see your heart differently than if you just come across hatefully with it.
That's a huge topic. That's why I paused for a second. That's like a topic in and of itself, and hopefully I can have you back to go into some of that. But when people experience things from, let's say, a pastor, or some, even if it's not a pastor, but somebody who just has very strong values in their faith, and they get condemned by that person and they don't do what you were doing, where you're like, I don't agree with this decision or with this stance, but I love you.
Right.
That's what you said multiple times
I'm,
on
I'm
your
glad that you
season.
heard that. That's what I wanted to be heard. That's what I hoped would not be edited out. I'm so thankful that you're repeating that to me today because that's who John Brennan is. That's who I want you to see is that I don't know you well. That's the first time we've ever spoken, except for emails planning this.
Yep.
And I want you, when you think of John Brennan, to say, "Hey, I don't know his stance on everything, but I know that if we ever had a disagreement, he's going to come from a place of love. And he's going to embrace me as a brother that walks this planet with him, and he's going to want to be my friend, even if we have disagree on topics. And if you can't do an interview on a podcast, or if you can't go be on the real world, you can't be on a reality show, or you can't, go to work with a coworker and coexist and come from a place of love, then you don't deserve to be on this planet. If you can't get on Twitter without being hateful, then you don't deserve to be on Twitter. Like, just go away. You're making the world a worse place to be. And we just need to approach each other with love. And those are the words of Jesus. Okay, God who created all of us. And so that's the way I live my life. I don't always do it perfectly. Okay, you follow me around with a camera, and some people have, then you're going to see some things you don't like about me, and you're going to see some mistakes, and you're going to see some things that I wish I could go back and change. But if you look at my life as a whole, I hope that you say, oh man, that guy, he comes from a place of love in his heart.
Danielle said, yes, I love the way you carried yourself as a Christian man.
Well, thank you. I don't always do the best job, but I strive to.
Tammy actually said that when you guys were having the conversation and you repeated your stance. She said if more people were like you, and if more people were like, I don't necessarily agree with what you're saying, but I'm willing to support you as a person because I love you as an individual, that type of thing, our world would be a better place.
And so now you see why Tammy loves me.
Yeah.
Okay. Because of the way that I truthfully expressed myself to her. I didn't back down from my stance. Okay. I was not wishy washy with my opinion, but I overshadowed that difference with a heart of love. And that's why she still accepts my calls. That's why she responds to my texts. That's why we still have a friendship, although we are nothing the same, because I expressed myself from a place of love and she received it the way it was intended.
So I'm going to read a couple more of these comments, and then I have one more couple of questions that I have for you, and then I'm going to wrap this one up.
All right.
This one says, John, thank you for being genuine while maintaining your integrity.
Thank you.
This one here says, I would love to see you on any reality show.
Well, I've been on a few. And I would love to do more. And, I hope I get the call to do All Stars 4, whatever they're on. I mean, I want to be on the challenge. I want to, if they ever did a Big Brother and invited real world stars, I would go. If they ever did another Real World and said, hey, take John and Ayanna and a couple other crazy people and put them together, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
We got a campaign for that. John, Ayanna, and you could fill it with whoever else, just those two alone.
That'd be great, right?
I already know it was going to be a good show.
We would make a good show.
Let me see. His love of God and his fellow man really comes through.
Well, I appreciate that. That's flattering. This world's getting crazier. It's not getting more loving. It's getting more hateful, and we're getting more divided. And that's a huge compliment. Nice thing to say. I still got a long way to go, but I'm working on it. I'm working on me.
One last thing I was going to say is that right before I turned the camera on, I was talking to John about the challenge and saying, I love the challenge. I've been watching the challenge for years, but I didn't really remember him on the challenge. So I went back. I was just watching the Inferno 2 this morning. And yeah,
my last challenge experience, my last appearance.
Yeah, you were on there. It showed you and Julie's relationship. Actually, you and Julie were close. You and Beth, as we already know, you guys were close. I saw there was the challenge where you were on the stilts and then you had to fill up the blender or something like that with some kind of fruit, and you fell a couple of times, but then you got back up and you won your heat.
I did.
And then Mike the Miz was supposed to go in, and then
he was supposed to go in.
Mike the Miz is supposed to go in or get picked, I guess. And you said, I'm volunteering. And it showed you saying, hey, Jesus sacrificed himself for us, and I am going to sacrifice myself for the sake of the team.
True story. Yeah. I mean,
do you regret that decision? Would you do it again if you had
Okay, here's the thing. When you're on an elimination reality show, you don't volunteer to go into the elimination. You avoid the elimination.
Yeah.
I have no excuse or explanation for why I did that, except I was trying to be popular, I guess. Mike, I'll call him the Miz because he was he was the most valuable team member that we had, and I thought I would be doing my team a service to do that, and I would surely win and come back, and then I'd be Mr. Popular because I had done that, but I lost and went home. And have never been back on the challenge since then. So it turns out to be a bad decision. But, I always say, just jokingly, of course, that The Miz would never have become the WWE superstar that he is if it weren't for me volunteering to go into the Inferno. That really, it should be me that is the WWE superstar and not The Miz. But, I had such a short stint there on Inferno 2 that, Darrell was my roommate, and Mike and Brad, and they all went on to be superstars in the challenge, and I have never been cast again. And so I contacted him on Twitter, and I'm like, "Hey, do you remember me?" Darrell, and he's like, "Dude, I was on a show with you. Of course, you slept in the bed next to me. Like I remember you." I'm like, "Well, I was there for such a short amount of time that I didn't know if you'd remember me, and you've done all these shows since then." And of course, Ms. Still gets me tickets to WWE shows, and Brad, I've been in touch with Brad, and just, "Hey, dude, you remember me?" He's like, "John, of course I remember you," but I didn't know if these people would remember me. Karamo was on that show.
Yeah.
Dan Renzi, uh, Derek. That's where I met Derek, and
Derek, yep.
Derek had me on Challenge Mania when they were here in Nashville. So, but here's the thing: I would never do that again. I would not volunteer to go into the elimination. I would stay, and I would win. But there were a lot of reasons why I did that, and but yeah, that was my last challenge appearance, and and then before that, I was on Battle of the Seasons with Beth, and we got voted home because of Beth's unpopularity. So I've not lasted very long, but next time I get an opportunity, this John Nice Guy thing you got going on is gone. Like, I'm gonna be vicious. I've seen the way they do each other on these shows,
Cutthroat.
and it's vicious. And and Tina, I contacted Tina because I've been watching Tina on All Stars, and I'm like, "Hey, Tina, do you remember me?" She's like, "Yeah, I remember you. We were on the thing together, Inferno." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I was there for like not long." She's like, "I remember you."
I wanted to say something about that. As you mentioned cameras and everything, I just started going to Challenge Mania events.
Oh yeah, you should have come to Nashville.
I wish. At the beginning of this year, I met Ayana.
Yeah.
I met Tina. I met a lot of these people that you're talking about at these different Challenge Manias that I've gone to. And when there's no cameras, I mean, aside from, fans holding up their phones, these people seem to get along with each other so well.
Yeah.
People I saw have these
Why do you think that is?
rivalries, hugging each other, smiling with each other.
I'm gonna show you a picture. I'm gonna show you. I'm sorry, I'm looking down, but I want to show you.
You're about to surprise me, I'm sure.
So here's the thing. Since you brought it up, let's see if I can. That is the intro of Inferno 2. The good guys versus the bad guys. Me and Jody walked in together. And then, so I'm watching All Stars, 2? And I see Ayana, and she has, this girl, she done gone and ate Ayana's Greek salad. Or she ate Jody's Greek salad.
That was the moment.
And it was the moment. And she's going,
the moment.
I ate it with my hands.
I ate your Greek salad. I didn't use a fork.
And Jody's just sitting there going, what is, and I'm thinking, this Ayana girl, she's like the Tammy. She is like the Tammy of the challenge. And then she turns out to be the nicest possible person on the planet.
You know what, John? I thought the same thing.
I mean, how can you be that mean to Jody? Because Jody, I love Jody's so nice and likable, and she's just looking at Ayana like, you have gone mad. You've gone crazy on this show. And she's like, I ate your Greek salad. And everybody, like, no one can hold a straight face. They're just like, and I'm like,
everyone is cracking up.
And so, and I'm like, oh, that girl, she's vicious. Like, I don't want to be on a show with her. Then next week, she's talking nice about me on podcast, and now like we're good friends.
She's one of the nicest people I ever met.
But Mark, when you point a camera at somebody in paradise in a tense situation,
with like money on the line too,
and everybody's going to watch it and have an opinion, you turn into a reality star, and you start eating people's salad that don't belong to you. And it's crazy.
You know what she told me though? I asked her about that moment, and she was telling me she's last known for getting kicked off of her season. I think it was Road Rules. I forgot. Right? I think it was a Road Rule season, and she got kicked off of the season. And she said, this season, with the things that were going on in the house, if I had reacted like the old Ayana, that would be the next thing that's in people's mind. This fresh new generation seeing like an Ayana that fights with people or whatever. So she said, let me flip this around and make this into a funny moment.
It was
where,
funny.
Yeah.
Jody didn't think it was funny. Jody didn't think it was funny at all. But yeah.
I was about to put a picture up. And
no
it was the
way.
same
No way.
synergy, John.
All
synergy,
right.
John.
All right, I'm gonna show you another picture. Then I'm gonna show you another picture. Well, okay. Now I love Ayana, and I'd move into a real world house with her, and I hope that we both get on the next challenge because I love to be on the challenge with her. And she's become one of my favorite reality stars. But you see what happens? You see what you just said? Well, I didn't want to be known as the last Ayana that was here. I wanted to have a whole new, persona for the new viewers. That's the type of thing that goes through your head. Why are we feeling the pressure to think those things? Because people are going to watch it and make judgments, and we want them to see what we want them to see. Now, this picture, see if I can, is from Battle of the Seasons, 2001. Now, we shot it right after 9/11, but I don't think it aired till 2002. But this is, that is me on the second challenge of my life. So now you've seen pictures of the very first challenge was Road Rules All Stars. That picture I just showed you was my second challenge. It was called Battle of the Seasons. It was in 2001. And then the picture of me and Jody was Inferno 2. And that is the 2005. So that is 3 challenges that I have been on. And 2 real worlds, Road Rules, and the 3 challenges. I mean, if I'm not an all-star OG, I don't know. Mark Long, I don't know what you're looking for, but you have overlooked the pioneer. If you are the godfather, I am the god grandfather. All right, let's go.
John, I want to thank you so much for this interview. I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Me too.
This is my favorite interview that I've done so far.
Awesome. Mine too.
Out of all 2, I definitely enjoyed Ayana's as well.
Yeah,
don't get mad at me if you watch this, Ayana. But
she's gonna watch it and everything. I mean, she's gonna eat your salad. That's what she's gonna do. She's gonna come to New York. She's gonna eat your salad. Hey, I got your number and you got mine. I come to New York. We're gonna hang out.
Yes, absolutely.
Can you picture me in New York? I'm coming to New York City.
I wanted to say, my followers know that I message everybody. I'm like, hey, can I get an interview? Can I get an interview? Some don't respond. Some say yes and just never keep the communication going. You were definitely the easiest one for me. I was thinking that I was going to have to go back and forth. Hey, talk to my manager, this and that. And it was just like,
all these pretentious reality. No, listen, they acting busy. I like doing this because I like meeting folks like you and talk to my manager. If they say talk to your manager, you just say, you know what, talk to the hand. You don't need to be on my podcast. But I'll make a list of the nice people that have been on the show. But actually some of the mean ones would probably be good guests for you. Yeah. But you wouldn't think this, but Coral and I are very good friends.
Love Coral.
Of course you do.
I mean, on the show.
She's
never
on the show.
With her, but
no, on the show you just kind of want to stay away from her. But like she's
a scary love.
Yeah,
the same way how I love a CT, an Abram. There's certain people that I'm like, I love watching you.
Yeah,
but I don't know if I could be in the house with you. I might be a little scared.
Yeah. Well, I'll make a list and of suggestions and whatever. But there's some fun people on there. But yeah, dude. Yeah, you do a great job. And everybody that's watching, listen, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at JohnBrennan_com because they wouldn't let me do JohnBrennan.com. But
let me post that at
JohnBrennan_com. And then I'm on TikTok at JohnBrennan.com. And I'm on Facebook. I got the blue check, except TikTok doesn't have the blue check. But Paramount got me the blue check when I did the. There it is. Right there? That's exactly right. And that's also my Twitter. And Facebook's easy to find. It's John Brennan Country. But I need Twitter followers. Like, I'm feeling really neglected about my Twitter.
You heard this man. Follow him. IG, Twitter. Campaign for that show with Ayana, John, and other house guests.
Let's do it.
And we'll
other house guests. Now that's scary. Let me let me be involved in the process of selecting this house guest.
All right, John.
Have a good day. Hey, thanks,
You too.
bro.
Have a great day.
Bye bye.
Appreciate it.